today's session. Today's date is 15th of July, uh, 2020, and we are going to see today the alternative software architecture designs for software engineering in a software design and analysis as in a part of your unit number 3. But before going for this thing, what I saw when I sent this reminder on the email, I just found only 20 people have registered, out of which 5 people are from the faculty group, means me, director sir, deputy director sir, dean academics sir, and uh, your class teachers and other faculties. Okay, they are not actually joining as an attendee. So only 115 students are registered with the SCPM class, while we are having the strength of 100 and I think 33 or 35 something. Okay, so those students who are not yet registered to this WebEx training, online training, I am asking them to register as soon as possible by today itself. Then you are going to have your CAE on 18th of July. Okay, and you will be given with 1 hour or something time as per the paper. The paper you have to write it down and how to solve. Okay, and everything will be given online through Google Classroom. Okay, so everybody of you must join the Google Classroom. If you are not on a Google Classroom, you are not going to get the paper. Okay, online paper. So let's start with the this alternative architecture. So I'm going to start sharing my desktop with you. Uh, so what actually this alternative architecture? So today we are going to see this alternative architecture, architectural designs. But prior to that, I just want to give you some insight into the use case diagram, class diagram, whatever diagrams that you generally use in UML, in your software requirement specification and software design. Okay, so now let's consider what is software designing here. If you go with the software designing thing, and if you try to find this software designing, uh, so let's see what software designing say. Here are the symbols. First, you heard about these use cases. So this symbol here, if you see the mouse cursor, this symbol is your actor symbol. So I'm just drawing this symbol here, actor. So this actor can be anyone. So if you go to the properties, you can change the properties of this actor, and likewise, for example, here you are I'm having this actor, and now I'm having the properties here. Okay, so I can make the property change color and other things for this actor, and can say apply, close. So we are having here actor. I'm deleting this image of actor now, deleted. uh, and we are having a simple example. We are taking this example from here. We are taking this example. What we can say, we have this simple uh, shop in Wagholi. What you can say, your site. I'm simply making changes into this shop in Wagholi. And right click on this, go to the properties of the text, and I'm simply what you can say, improving this proper 40 points so that it will be more visible to you. And so instead of normal, I'm making it bold. Okay, so okay, shop in Wagoli is what our simple web app that we want to design. So when you go to the user, what end user will say? So first thing, that is you are having a end user. So I'm saying this as a end user or a new user actually. So new user. So this is the new user, which is an actor. This is a symbol used in use case diagram for the actor. Okay, now this new user has certain type of use cases. What a new user required to do? If you are a new user, okay, if you are a new user, you will have this use case. Okay, this use case is not actually working here. Here you are having this new user and then you are having the use case diagram, selecting and writing the use case. Okay, so you can have the use case like this. What new user can do? New user can register. Actually, the symbol for use case is this, but it's not working. That's why I have to take this symbol for this. So this user required to register for this use case for the we can say the application. So when is register for this application, so what these are the operation, that is you are having this user, and this user is actually depend on this registration link. So you can have this relationship from, okay. No, why this is not working? Let me restart the application. Okay, so I'm just restarting this application. Exit without save, and then I'm seeing this. Sometimes these applications actually won't work properly when it comes to network sharing. So DI is the free open source software for creating your logic or your UML diagrams and other things. So now I'm using the software here to show you this use case diagram, class diagrams, etc. Okay. So when we are using this uh, software, here you are having now everything is enabled. Okay, so we are having this a simple application, and that application is what? Shop in Waggle. You are having this actor. Let's call this as a new user. New user actor is created, and we finalize this actor. This actor required to have some use cases. The use case, okay, it's not working here. Let me draw the things then instead of writing. So here you are having the simple actor. Actually, this is your actor. uh, okay, for working things you can have this there. Okay, and this actor now can register. This actor can register here. Yeah, this actor can register. So this is the first use case for this actor, and then it can go with the what you can say, the different options. Now you have this as a new user, and you, okay, so we can have this as a new user. Here you are having this. Well, we'll see this we using another software, Modelio, afterwards. Right now, I'm not going through these UML diagrams completely because software is not working properly, so it's quite difficult to uh, give you the thing. Now, first thing that I just want to wake up few people from the sleep. Asma, Nihal, Samir Misra, Ajay, Vanjini. Okay, don't minimize your windows. Yeah, they are your attention is also calculated by machine learning programs. Okay, so here, yeah, we are having only 51 attendees till now, and I'm expecting more. So let's start with today's thing, and that's our software engineering alternative architectural designs. So we are going with a slow pace into this software engineering alternative architectural design so that you can get maximum out of this, because to design a software we require to go through these things. So first, what are our objectives? It's to learn these architectural design alternative things and how to use it. So first objective is to assessing the alternative architectural designs, then to use architectural styles in designs. So these are the objective. Now what is assessing our alternative architectural designs? So simply if you go with a scene and you can say what is the architecture. So architecture is what we call as a bait or a wagger. Now we must have to understand what is a bait or a wagger. Let's say suppose if I want to make say body like a Ritik Roshan. Okay. So what will be our bait or a wagger? That we will try to imitate his routine. Yeah. But cost may not be affordable. So that is what we call say bait. An architecture is simply a bait or wagger for the success of a system or on the success of a system. So when we say that is if I build something in this particular way, there is a more possibility of success. That is what we call as a wagger. For example, if I want to become a successful businessman, who you will follow? Obviously, you will not follow me. You will follow the Mukesh Ambani, Anil Ambani. No, not Anil Ambani. You will always follow the Mukesh Ambani because you want to become a successful businessman. Let's say, suppose if you want to become a successful trader, who will follow? Obviously, Warren Buffett, not me, neither any of your friend, because they haven't got success by. So when we say architecture, we are actually referring to the way through which we actually got what you can say realization of something. So when someone realizes something, okay, when someone realizes something, what we call it as a architecture or simply a way to achieve something. For example, let's say suppose if I ask you to drive a bicycle, so how you will drive the bicycle? There is a particular architecture, there is a particular way, there is a particular bait for that, and so it will give you the success. You are not going to drive the bicycle using remote. Yeah, you are going to drive bicycle by pedaling it. So that is what you can say the architecture or architecture style. You have to be very clean with this. I can't give any one of you to annotation thing, because many students, if they are given with the annotation rights, instead of annotating correctly, they try to make some nuisance in the lecture. Okay, so do not place any such request for annotation. Thank you. Uh, then architecture is what? So when you say architecture, it is a system that can be implemented in more than one way. So you can have many architectures for things. For example, let's say suppose if you are running a software, this software can be offline standalone. Okay, you have the standalone version for the software. Then this software may be cloud based, the software may be cloud based, and then you may have the light version for the software. Light version means portable light version, or you may have the crisscross, or you can say the software version which can have all these facilities, means it is cloud based as well as at the same time offline. For example, if you go with the Cisco WebEx, it have the desktop app which can launch the Cisco WebEx meetings and training sessions. It is browser based and at the same time it is cloud based. Okay, so it's how the mini architecture or a way of representing or execution. So when we say a system can be implemented in more than one way, we know that some users they don't trust in a cloud. So where they are going to store their data? Obviously on their local machine. So you require to give them store data on a local machine. Some users they won't have you can say things. uh, am I audible to everybody? Because in one session some of you have said that I am not audible to everybody, but while my recording was you say having no problem. If I'm audible to everybody, just give me thumbs up in question and answer or in uh, your participants say. Okay. Am I audible? Yes. Okay. Anu Brahmankar say yes, I am audible. Okay. Raunak Goj say I am audible. Thank you. So this is what we can say the architecture. Now when you say architecture, it is again the thing what is it to trust the design, you need to analyze it for its trade-off. Now what is trust the design? How you are going to trust something, okay, without analyzing it? That is why, say suppose if I give you something to eat, and if you don't know me, then you obviously doubt that thing. And that is what you can say the trust. So trust happens if you know something about either the developer or the software. Okay, for example, let's say some software come to you and it says software is from Microsoft, so you'll automatically trust it. But some software comes to you and says the developer is unknown, you will not trust it. Okay, but now the developer is unknown but software is coming from Git Hub, you trust it. So when you say analyze, we are actually considering the source, that is called as a prejudice or a perception of the person about the software development thing. But there are trade-offs. Software is a product, and so software gets sold, and so there are trade-offs in a software analysis, and those trade-offs are required to be you can say analyzed. So software engineering institute say, okay, or only C, you can say this software engineering institute, they have given a method of this trade-off analysis which is called as atom. Okay, so trade-off analysis method, and this is an iterative evaluation of process of the software architecture. What is iterative means? If you have done a software analysis for a version 1 of software, that analysis no longer valid for the version 2 of the software. This is what we call as a iterative. That means you have to reanalyze the software which is every new version. And so when we say this as a thing, this is what we can say a software analysis or atom uh, thing here. And this say have given this software analysis. So how this atom works? So first you have to collect the scenarios. So what are the scenarios? Scenarios are the use cases. That's why I before starting this alternative, I decided to give you the use case diagram. Now let me explain this in a simplest possible way. Let's say here you are having a user, this is a new user, I am having the simple symbol here, this is the new user symbol, or you can say the I'm seeing here, this is quite difficult to draw, but consider this. Here you are having this new user symbol. What this new user can do now, he can register into the system. So let's say this is can register into the system, because without that it won't become the user. Once this registration is done, it has to submit the form. So when it says the submit the form, okay, this registration process actually have many use cases. First fill the form, okay, then you are going to submit the form. Okay, submit form is the registration process link. Now what this submit form says, okay, check form for what you can say errors. So this extends to check form for the errors use case. So if you go with the registration, you have the fill the form use case, then you are having submit button on this registration, and here you are having the use case for check the form. If use case for the check the form is correct, okay, means there is no error, your form gets submitted. So here you are having one database, what we call as a UDB or user database, and in this UDB you get everything saved, everything that is user information is saved. And now when this is okay, it is saved in the user database, okay. But if there is some error, okay, there is some error, what this use case is does, this use case asks for proper or correction of this error, and this correction of the error goes back to this registration. So re-registration happens, and likewise. So this is the complete use case flow in the new user, and this is what we call as a collection of use cases. Now when we say collection of use cases here, this is the first is only the registration process. In registration process, you are doing the registration, filling the form likewise, and if there is some error, you required to correct that error, and you have to resubmit the form, and it goes on. So once these things are done, what this new user becomes user. But now even if you becomes the user, okay, valid user, you can still have the another registration by another username. So that means you are actually inheriting all the operations, you are actually inheriting all the operation and properties of the user, new user, and you can be a user. Means AS Rumale can log in into the Gmail system, become the user, register with the Gmail system with one name, can register with the Gmail system with another name, can register with the Gmail system with another name, and likewise. So the I can actually register with many email account with the same system. So every time I can do these things. So what this means, the user inherits all the properties of new user. Means user can register with the for the new ID. But what are the use cases which are not available with new user and those are available to this user? The first use case that this user is having is the login. A new user can't log in because new user required to do the registration. Then this can do browsing. When I say browsing of the system, that means it can read the something, okay, it can edit something, it can do many other things, and that is what we call as a browsing. And last thing that a user can do is it can go out or log out from the system. And so if you go with the things, so this is what we can say the scenario. This is the second scenario of the system, and that system's scenario says that a user can do this thing. Once user is registered, user do this thing. So if you have the login required to have the username as one use case, password is there one use case, password checking required to be there, and messages are sent, and this password checking actually extend to this user database. So if you go with, you got here the two use cases collecting the scenarios for trade-off analysis. What you get, the each module, a registration module is well explained by this, and login module and browsing module is well explained by these use case. So when we collect the scenarios, all the scenarios of the system, what happens exactly, that we get the complete idea about how the system is going to respond to the end user and how the end user is going to treat the system or use the system. And that's why the first stage for architecture trade-off analysis method is collect the scenarios. When these scenarios are collected, you require to now elicit the requirements, constraints, and environment description which comes from these things. For example, for a new user, what is the requirement? You have to register. And what is the eliciting the requirement here, or eliciting the requirement? To find out how is going to register for the account into your software system. What are the constraints? Let's say suppose someone is trying to register automatically, and if it is not a human, as a robot is there, so you have to give this registration attempt, two attempt or three attempt only. If someone fail for the three attempt, ask that user to come after 24 hours, after 4 hours or something. And likewise, that is what is a constraint. Or say suppose if you are in a loop, and that loop is something, like say you are in a for loop which is infinite of time, so there is no constraint on the execution. But if the loop is having some bound, okay, that is means loop can be executed only 100 times. So you know that 100 is a constraint for this thing. So constraint is the limitation, or what you can say something. And so when we are saying this as a constraint of your software, you require to identify those constraints also. So first you have to elicit all the requirements in a software. Okay, so you elicited all the requirements. Now what are the constraints for the software that are elicited? Then the environment. When I'm saying the environment, if you are in a system, let's say suppose this is your system, central system, and this central system obviously is going to communicate with other system. Let's say this is another computer, say this is a printer, okay, and say this is something as a network. So this system, your system is actually interacting with another computer, with some printer device, maybe real or virtual, and with the network, and via network with many other persons. So when we are having such type of things, what we call this as the environment. So this is environment. Now another thing with the environment is that environment also means the system on which your application is running. It may be the Android is an environment, it may be Windows, it may be iOS, it may be Linux. Okay, so the operating system or any system which is external to your application is called as environment, because they are giving some input to your system for proper execution. Okay, so here you require to elicit the requirements, you have to have the constraint on the requirements, and you have to go for the environment things. Now when we are having all these things, we know these things may affect the overall working of your software. So you require to find out what type of architectural designs you have to employ, architectural designs or patterns to employ to get a successful version of your software. So you have to make a desktop version of your software, you have to make a client server version of your software, means there must have to be a client, or you can have a purely online, no client is required, client is browser based, so there is no client installation is actually required by the end user. So what we call that as a cloud based application. Okay, so here you can have the three things. First desktop, okay, then you are having the this client server application. Okay, we can say client server application is there. So you are having the server and client, and then you are having the cloud based application. So for example, let's say suppose if you go with the development of something, just consider Python language right now. If you are having Python language install on your desktop, okay, you can go with the desktop version, you can go with the client server version, and you can go with the cloud version also. So there you can save your programs and everything for this thing. So this is what we can call as an architecture styles or patterns, because based on the needs of the software customer, they are going to buy your software. Then another architecture style is, you may have the free version or the community version of your software, you will have basic version of your software, you may have the business version of your software. So community version, for example, if you want your own WebEx meetings application, WebEx is Cisco is giving you a free meeting version, but it actually restricts or have the constraints of only 100 participant maximum, and 30 to 50 minutes max timing. So if you are having a small meetings, you can use that free version. Zoom is giving the free version, then they are having the basic version. Okay, for a minimal price you can increase to the 55 and something, and it can have the max version where you can have the maximum people who can enter into that particular thing. So these are called as the architectural style. So when we say architectural style, this doesn't mean that you are you say you have to go and invent something very new. Architectural style is simply the way which guarantees you success maximum. Okay, so how you are going to describe these architectures? So here, if you are on the desktop, your all modules are within one program, so you have to give the module view. If it is a client server, few modules will be executed on the client side, few modules will be executed on the server side. And if it is cloud based, then all modules will be executed on the cloud, and the client module is only the access given to this. So you have the process view, model view, and the data flow view. So how the data will be flow from one client to server, or server to client, from one process to another process, and likewise. So when we are describing this, we have to consider these three views. So modules are nothing but, for example, your login form is the one module, registration form is the one module, and when you press the submit button on a registration or login, it get processed. So process view is the another model, how that registration will be done, and likewise. And whatever the data which is actually inputted, processed and stored, that gives the data flow. So the entire process, the use case view actually gives you the detail of this architectural style and pattern, and that you require to identify when it comes to the thing. So this is the third step. The what is the fourth step for this architecture trade-off analysis is you have to evaluate the quality attributes. Now when you can say quality can be achieved only if and only your system is providing security to the data, is providing privacy to the user, and it's giving performance, and there should have to be accuracy in its output. So if these things are actually satisfied by your system, you can say it is a quality system. Then you have to, fifth step is you have to identify the sensitivity of quality attributes to various architectural attributes. For example, let's say suppose you are doing some banking transaction. Okay, your application is online banking transaction application, and you said sent 100 rupees. Okay, 100 rupees sent, but due to the network failure, its amount is debited from your account, but is not credited to the account where you want to transfer the thing. Okay, so in that case you have to revert back the operation and have to update credit your account by the 100 rupees, and likewise. So that is what we call as a sensitivity. And so sensitivity means how accurate is your transaction, and how you can say accurately it can process everything. So you have to identify the sensitivity of the every quality attribute in a system, and that what we say when it comes to trade-off analysis. And the sixth and last is that critic candidate architectures. Okay, so this is actually developed in step 3, critic, that you have to describe everything. So critic here doesn't mean that you have to nag the things. Critic here means you have to analyze the things for its weaknesses and how to remove those weaknesses, either by providing the some collaboration with the other system, or adding new features or new security level to this. And you require to go once again from 3 to 4. So 6 is simply saying that is you have to repeat 3 4 5 3 4 5 until and unless you are not satisfied. Okay, so once you get satisfied with all the descriptions, evaluation of quality attributes, and identification of the sensitivity of these quality attributes, you can go further. So these are the atom activities, or these are the architecture trade-off analysis method activities or stages. Okay, now what is architectural complexity? Architectural complexity is something which is actually depends on the dependencies between different modules, different data, different you can say stakeholders in your system. Okay, so a useful technique for assessing is that complexity is the consider these dependencies between components within the architecture and the other operating systems which are using this thing. So these dependencies actually show how control is flowing from one thing, or how data is flowing, information and control flow within the system. So first is the sharing dependencies. For example, let's say suppose you are having two or three systems, and there are same resource. Okay, a printer is there. Printer is non-shareable resource if it is a physical one. Virtual printer is shareable resource. Okay, so now if you have a non-shareable resource like a real printer, and you want to print some data, and you have two or three modules who want to send data to this printer. Okay, then this same resource procedures who produces and who consumes, like this. So this is what we can say suppose one process is producing certain output, one process is producing certain output, then this output is actually consumed by other process. So what we say, this consumer process depends on this producer process. So here when you say this consumer process is depend on the producer process, you have to identify the resources of same type. Let's say suppose resource is non-shareable, which is produced by this producer process, then this resource which is non-shareable must have to be consumed by the consumer in critical way. I'm not saying non-critical means all are. Critical means one consumer only can use that. Take an example. This example is bit sound to be vulgar, but this is the correct example. For example, when we go to the toilet or bathroom, only one person uses it. Okay, so this is a non-shareable resource. In the same way, some data produced by your process is non-shareable. In such a way, you require to have a queue of the consumer processes, and they must have to consume that, okay, use that, and have to pass that process or that data to other process after it. Okay, so this is what we can say. We are having this processor resource or consumer model, because if it is not sharing dependencies, if not handled properly, they can create the scenario for deadlocks. And if the deadlock happens, your system may fail to perform properly. And if your system fails to perform properly, it can cause what you can say, uh, the damage to the entire system. What you can say, the complete system will go halt, your software won't work properly, and likewise. So sharing dependencies are the first dependencies that you require to look after or look for when it comes to software uh, design and development. Okay, or when, because they actually defines the architectural complexity. Then the next next dependencies are flow dependencies. When we are seeing the flow, we are actually talking about the control. Okay, I'm really thankful. Right now we are on the 83 attendees. Is actually count is actually wavering. I mean 83, 84, 83, 84 something. Okay. Uh, those who are not yet registered for this WebEx training, I'm asking all those students to get registered today itself, because once the registration link get deactivated, you will not find point, I can say, way to re-register for this. So flow dependencies we are going here. So what is flow dependency? There are two type of flow. One is the data flow, another is control flow. Okay, for example, let's say suppose here you are having a form. One field of form is here. This is say the name. Once you enter data into this name field, the control automatically have to go to the another field. Okay, and this other field should have to be what you can say, not pass the control, and likewise. So you are actually defining how the control will flow. Okay, so when we say this is a control flow, that is what, so you are saying that is control will be flow from in this direction. So you have to fill first your name, then you have to fill the other data, and likewise. So the control will flow only in this direction. If you want to fill something which is after this what you can say, this data is disabled, then that is what we call say control flow. Then the data flow. So when you have processed this data get actually store, and before storing this data required to be get processed. So encryption, decryption, other processes are there if you are using the network to transfer this data from one node to another node over the network. And so all those flow dependencies, they actually defines after this what you can say, your sharing dependencies, the uh, complexity of your entire architecture. Okay, so you have to be very uh, what can say, careful when you are designing these flow dependencies. This represents the relationship between producers and consumers of the resources. Okay, how the data will flow from one process to another process, how the control will go from one process to another process, which process is depend on which process. All those things are actually considered in here, the flow dependencies. Now after these flow dependencies, there is another dependency, and that is called as a constraint dependencies. Now what are constraint dependencies here? There are three types of constraint dependencies. One is what we call as technological, another is time, and another is financial. We are not talking about the financial dependencies here, because we are thinking of software development design. So we are only talking about the two dependencies. First is a technological, second is time dependencies. Time dependencies are actually related with the performance of your system. So speed of your algorithm, accuracy of algorithm, that all comes in a timeliness, effectiveness and efficiency of the thing. Technological dependency means your customer is asking you to design and develop the software only in a particular language, in a particular technology. Means they want you to design and develop the software, but only for the Windows, or only for the iOS, or only for the Linux, or maybe the cross platform. You should have to use the Java, you should have to use the Maven library, you should have to use the all open source libraries from Apache or something like that. Then you can call that as a constraint. Means you are limited with, or you are constrained with, or you are binded with certain type of things, and that is what is a constraint dependency. So you have to consider this constraint, represent the constraints on retrieve flow of control among the set of activities. So which activities be done by this, and likewise. I'm really thankful right now 88 attendees are shown on the attendee list for this attendance. Okay. So these are the things that you require to go for these constraint dependencies. So when you want to identify the architectural complexity, you should and must think in terms of dependencies. Okay. If you are not thinking in terms of dependencies, it is very difficult to identify the complexity of the application. Now there is one language designed just like your programming language. This is called as architectural description language, or ADL. One best example of such architectural description language is unified modeling language, or UML. Okay, we are going to see that UML thing. If because this UML softwares are not working properly with desktop sharing facility of WebEx, maybe some mismatch or incompatibility is there. I'm going to create the independent video of that, and then I will upload that video on the YouTube for your referral, so that you can know how to use those software. And if I found a software which going to use completely, or you can say which is compatible with this WebEx sharing, then we can show online in real time how to design and develop those things to you. Okay. So what I am expecting you people for this purpose should have to subscribe to YouTube channel Tutor AS Romale. You already know the channel and everything. So our architectural description language, they provide the semantics and syntax for describing the software architecture. So it shows a particular type of things, and likewise. So the semantics and syntax are provided by this. And then once these architectural designing languages are mastered by you or the software, okay, for that it's very easy to design the entire architecture and to define the dependencies between different modules, and likewise. So I'm not going to read these architecture style is transformation or something. So there are certain steps for this using the architectural styles in designs. Okay, if you follow these steps will automatically help you in designing your architecture in a good way. First thing, that is, you have to review the fundamental system model. Okay, so what exactly user wants? User wants desktop version of the software, user want client server version of the software, user want cloud based version of the software. That you have to first identify this fundamental system model of the what you can say users requirement. Then you have to review and refine the data flow diagrams for the software. So based on the desktop model, data flow will be different. Based on client server model, data flow will be different. And based on your cloud dependency or cloud based model, data flow will be different. So accordingly you have to create the data flow model, or what you can say the data structure and data representation or data architecture of your system. Then you have to go for the step 3, and that is determine whether the data flow diagram has a transform or a transaction flow characteristics. If they are having the transform or a transaction flow characteristics, you have to consider about the control flow diagram also. Okay. And then fourth step is that you have to isolate this transform center, and, and you have to show for that transform and transaction the detailed diagram. Okay, so specifying incoming and outgoing flow boundaries for that particular transform and particular transaction. Okay, so you can say transform and transactions are actually the composite of the small data transfers. Okay, then you have to perform the first level factoring. That is, first level factoring here means you have to create a super view of your system. Then you have to create the sub view. So you have to see the system first from the bird's eye view. Then you have to go deeper, and you have to actually explore the entire system, and that is what is the first level factoring. Then you have to go for the second level factoring. Seventh is that you have to refine the first iteration architecture using these design heuristics for the improved software quality. So you have to once again communicate with your users, and likewise you have to get all the details from this user. So this is what today's lecture. So if you have any questions, queries, or something, you can ask. This entire presentation actually uses the data from the book of Roger Pressman, a software engineering practitioner approach. And this diagram I actually downloaded from the internet. I'm not having the copyright owner of this, and anyone who is there with the copyright owner or someone for this, they have their all credit. Simply use this for the fair use to what you can say, pass the knowledge to my students. Okay, so there no intention to infringe or no intention to claim anything as mine. Only this presentation design is of mine, and a copy have the copyright for that. So uh, I'm very delighted to answer your questions, and like to have your questions in question and answer box. Okay, so what I'm expecting, type your questions in question and answers if you are in the questions. If you like the today's session, give me the thumbs up or something, say wow, something like in your participants zone. Okay, so right now it's 1:34. So we already we are having total 10 minutes for question answer. Okay, Ronak said okay, she liked this, and okay. Anup have given me the applause. Thank you for the applause. Okay. Other people who are in a sleep zone, if you go through the YouTube video, wherever you find the red exclamatory mark, for example, these Abhishek Jadhav, Marudkar, Shelar, okay, and these people, that shows that they have simply opened the windows, log in into the system, then minimize that windows, and kept doing their work instead of giving any attention to the session. Thank you very much for the what you can say, appreciation by Shruti and Siddharth for saying nice session and great lecture. Thank you. But I would like to have this, because your questions are actually refresh me. Actually, they give me the challenge to study more. Because if I study more, then and then only I can get more knowledge of the subject. I can understand that subject more deeply, and if I understand the subject in depth, I can give more to the next batch. So whoever come after you, they will get more from me. If you ask me the questions, you are going to get the answer for that. But your questions actually ignite your mentor or inspire your mentor to study more, because that is actual feedback what we expect. So we are having the 10 minutes for this question answer session. Well, if you are not having these question answers, I will go with the thing, and that's what you can say. I will once again try to execute that Dia software so that you can get the thing. So I'm saying tech stack is the technological stack. It's a way what generally when they say this question is from Sushil Bardwaj. Tech stack is what? Technology stack. When they say full stack developer, for example, let's say suppose you are a web application developer. Okay. So what are the requirements for web application? You have to be master of HTML. You have to be master of CSS, cascaded style sheets. You have to be master of some script language like a JavaScript. Then you are in the version of that script, Angular, this and that. I'm not going in much depth of there, but you have to be there. And then so this because it's a web, you have to be familiar with PHP, you have to be familiar with XML, and at the same time you have to be familiar with the databases which are required to store some data. So when you are familiar with this and you know these things, at least up to the expert level. I am not saying expert means intermediately expert or even some beginning knowledge of them, and you are having this complete stack ready with you. So when you are saying the tech stack, you are actually saying that you are master of HTML, you know the CSS at a mastery level. Let's say CSS you know at up to this level. Then you are having this expertise in scripting language up to this level. Okay, you are having some expertise in PHP. Let's say of this level, PHP. Then you are having the say you can say expertise in XML and expertise in SQL databases. Then you are having the expertise in no SQL databases. Okay, so what you are having, all technologies covered. Okay, and apart from these web technologies, you also know some programming languages like say Java or Python. Okay, and that you can use with this web. So now you got the entire technology stack ready. If you know all these things, you can be considered as a full stack developer. If you are a full stack developer or full stack software engineer, what they will say, you are hireable, because it is actually every organization or a software company is require one person for HTML, another person for CSS, another person for JavaScript, another person for PHP, another person for XML, another person for SQL database, another person for no SQL database. Okay, one person for Java programming and one person for Python programming, and a website requires simple or small part from this, then you can say this if they go on hiring all these people and each person is asking for say 15 or 20,000 rupees salary, they say okay, giving this, how many people here you are having, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 and 9, and even if every person asks for the 20,000 rupees salary, you are the company required to pay 1,80,000 rupees per month. Instead, they says we are going to pay 80,000 rupees salary per month to a full stack developer. You got this, and this is called as a technology stack. Uh, Sushil Bhardwaj, are you satisfied with the answer? You got the answer for what is the stack, technology stack or tech stack? It is just the jargon words used by the people. Any other question? Sushil, if you got the answer, at least give the thumbs up or something that is yes, sir, because then and then only I can say get satisfaction that okay, my student got the answer. Okay. DevOps is for developer of operations, nothing else, or operators. Those are things. These are the new jargons. They are actually used by these HR people to confuse you. Okay, if you go on description in Wikipedia or wiki of these things, you will get the answers for that. Don't bother about this thing, DevOps or the tech stack. This simply means that you require to know the all say details of that particular software technology, nothing else. Any other question? Hello. Okay, this is already 145, and few people says nice session. Some says okay. Only one person, Sushil Bardaj, asked two questions. I'm really thankful to that. Actually, I don't know much about the DevOps, but as per as my knowledge, it is simply a technical jargon used by the HR people, okay, or marketing people. They who generally don't know much about the in-depth technology, so they just come up with such jargons and they include all those things into it. Uh, okay, I will try to answer this after getting exact knowledge about that. But that is what say. Okay, thank you very much. So I'm stopping now, sharing my sites. This okay. Stop the sharing, and if you like this session, I'm really thankful. If you not like this session and you said that is it's not okay to ask the questions publicly, you still have my email ID with you. And okay, so or on WhatsApp group also you can place your questions, or you can prepare the question and you can ask those questions in the next session. So with this thing, I'm saying that uh, I'm really thankful to you because at the in a session I got around some 89 or 90 something attendees live, and registered attendees are there, so you know that attendance is quite good today. Thank you very much for being with me for the 1 hour continue, and I will definitely try to get some good software to show you actual UML programming. DI is not working properly or not compatible with Cisco WebEx sharing facility. Thank you very much. I am ending the session, today's session here. Thank you. Session is ended.